My name is Francis Fox, and I have not done a chat in English perhaps for a couple of months. Why? Well, I was told not to do the maps, which was revealing a lot of really great information. So we're not doing the maps anymore. I understood that if I continued to reveal people that were behaving poorly, kind of like a political gossip, but from a remote viewing point of view, that I was going to have an awful lot of people who were going to hate me. And I don't need any more of that. So I kind of stopped doing that. But I think something dramatic has shifted. Um, and so I decided I would do a podcast on disclosure. But I'm going to go through my history of disclosure so you can see how ridiculous this situation is. I'm a military mind control victim. Okay. My father was Cuban. My mother was German, supposedly from the Blavatsky family. We're supposed to have incredible psychics. If you use that program where they take your DNA and they tell you where your family's from, you need to understand that those results are totally controlled and that the people that have very interesting ancestry are not allowed to know their ancestry. And that's going to become increasingly important. And we're talking about ancestry on planet Earth. So let's go into the disclosure. We're in Revelations. I think it was the 10th of April, the last veil that's supposed to be holding back information from the different dimensions that lifted. A lot of us have already completed part of the ascension process. There's an awful lot of stuff going on all at once, but I'm going to go ahead and limit it to my disclosures. Well, I'm not going to disclose anything new today, but a lot of you don't know me. Let me first disclose why my left eye looks so different from my right eye and why it looks like I have a veil over it. And that photograph behind me is when the Vatican was working 24/7 on erasing my memory, which would have been in the third eye. And it was my left eye, which is already limping due to a lot of emotional stress, that they were able to create what you're seeing here, which is worse than what it is today. But as I speak, if you're watching this on video, not just audio, you will probably see my left eye deteriorating because anytime I give this kind of a chat, there's a whole group of people with all sorts of electronics waiting to see if they can't knock me off my center, etc. So, disclosure. Well, I'm not right now, I'm not going to disclose anything about ETs. I'm just going to tell you my history with disclosure. In the 90s, a part of me woke up. My control facilitated that. And I started to remember things that I did not know had happened to me, which basically was a second life in which I was trained as a psychic spy and was a victim of military mind control, a continuation of a Nazi program. So that would be like my first experience with disclosure was when I told my family and friends. I don't know why did I do that? Because I thought that the good people would reach out and help me out. Well, good people, from the point of view of people like me, are really dumb. And they don't want to be bothered with information that shakes up their paradigm. And they already have enough trouble. They got to pay their rent, they got to their kids, the whole nine yards. Basically, the whole world turned on me. I went from being a reputable businesswoman, admired, to being a person who all of a sudden went crazy. I'm telling all these stories. Well, that's going to happen to everybody that discloses now. So I'm just telling you my version of it. Not my version, my actual history. So I ended up going to three different psychologists. There was no issue with my psychologist as to me inventing these memories that were coming up that were god awful. I ended up working with two specialists. One specialized in torture victims and prisoners of war. They kept bumping me up. Oh, no, no, this is too much for us. You need a specialist, specialist, specialist. And then they bumped me all the way up to Dr. Colin Ross, who is I'm hoping he's still alive, because this was 30 some years ago. And he specialized in military mind control victims, cult victims, satanic victims. And that's where I was required to work with him in his institute for a week in Texas, because my psychologist from the University of Miami said they wouldn't work with me anymore unless I worked with him. And those were the only conditions under which he would work with anybody. Well, the fact that I worked with him ended up being an incredible weapon against me. Oh my God, look at the kind of person she had to work with. I only worked with him because it was a requirement from the people, the psychologists that were taking care of me. I believe today it was a setup, because the first appointment I had with him in his clinic, he said to me, "Your stuff is really sophisticated. I don't think I can help you. Well, why don't you stay and let's come?" I believe he wanted me to stay because he wanted information. And I was so in a state of shock, I went ahead and I stayed. Okay, so that's my disclosure. I lose everybody. The only person that basically gave me some validation was a Jewish rabbi who said, and at that point, I stopped asking about this military stuff that I was put through. I was asking about the nature of evil. And a Jewish rabbi said to me, "Listen, no, we don't really have the answer to that. But I do have a friend of mine in New York, and he takes care of people who's got stories just like yours, stories." This was my history I was talking about. He said, "Call him." And I did. And that person, who was I don't know if he was a psychiatrist or psychologist, I talked to him, 10-minute phone conversation. Um, and he said, "Yes, I have patients that have your same history," or he didn't say history, I don't think, your same experiences. And apparently they're across the country, there are people coming up, all of them at the same time now, with these kind of stories, histories, experiences. That was it. I got zero support. I was totally abandoned, because obviously I must be crazy. Now, the one person that made a lot of sense was, this person said to, at that point, my husband, "Listen, there's two things here you got to think about. Either she really went through all those things she's talking about, me, at which time you really need to support her, or she didn't really go through any of those things, and she's got a problem and you need to support her." Well, that was accurate, but still no support. It reached the point where in the family I found out that they were discussing if maybe someday they were going to have to Baker Act me, which means put you in an institution because you're completely gone. And I was like, I don't think you can do that to people because they're talking, because I paid my bills, lived well, continued to work, had 30 some employees, never had any issues with the police. But I think people were really scared that I had lost it. And I would say to them, there's two issues here. I could be a liar. Do you think I'm a liar? And everybody would say, no, you never lied. We don't think you're a liar. Okay. So then, do you think I'm crazy? Well, you've never been crazy. I say, well, then maybe these stories are true. Well, I'm not going to go on and on about that. I have to say that I became very disillusioned, because all those years that I thought that if good people found out about this stuff, that they would help me out, me and the other kids that were in the program, total illusion. Nice people are very irresponsible. They don't want the responsibility of information if it's going to shape their paradigm. Okay. Disclosure. The whole thing with being a psychic spy, by the way, Hispanics accepted, people that were Jewish accepted my story. I guess because their lives have been so intertwined with conspiracies, etc. And many years later, as I started to get on to social media, my Hispanic followers don't have an issue because their instincts continue to take precedence over what science says. In other words, in this country, which is where I live, the United States, science became a religion. And of course, the bad people took advantage of that. So if science said something or scientists said something, well, that was just the way it was. Whereas Hispanics and from other countries, it doesn't really matter what science says or scientists or this latest study, which will be contradicted in 6 months. What is your heart telling you? What are your instincts telling you? What about those sensations where your little hair stands up on end? I mean, that's telling you something. So, and the people that follow me and track me, for them, it was okay that I would speak to my Hispanic followers. By the way, I consider myself Hispanic. That I would speak to my Hispanic followers because it was what the people I could not talk to were Americans. No, which includes this podcast. This is 30 years later, and my podcast continues, or doing anything in English is a problem. The bad guys don't want for the Americans to be woken up. Well, disclosure is going to wake up everybody. And the problem, because the information has been so limited, the problem is what they call the ontological shock, which is when you go into shock because you found out a piece of information that has completely pulled the rug out from under your life, not just a situation. I think if you're happily married and you think that your mate is faithful and you find out that they weren't, you go into a state of shock, but your entire life did not get upended. That part of your life got upended. The thing with disclosure with ETs, your entire life gets upended. And I do believe, because of the lack of information, that this country is going to go into ontological shock. A significant percentage of people, they don't have a place to put it. Now, I'm going to say the religions are going to get discarded. The Vatican, Catholic Church, that's gone. My revelations of what the Vatican does to me and where they do it. I don't have the time to read a letter from one of my followers who's apparently a really good remote viewer, who, after one of my chats, she went ahead and said she wanted to check out my story. Was the Vatican really doing something to me? She sent a really detailed description that we went ahead and followed up. You should develop your psychic abilities, which everybody has. It's very important. Anyway, this graphic, I did it. I'm not great at it, but the reason there's several of me is because we all, especially if you're in your mind control program or occult program, there's you, or not just you, there's several of you. In the first place, everybody who's on planet Earth, we're not from here originally. None of us. And we all have a part of us that we're not integrated with, that's off planet. So when you have all these bodies here, it's very accurate. And then you have everybody watching the ETs and the spy agencies and whatever. I laughingly said a couple years ago that the spy agencies really needed to get together. And if people do rideshare and timeshare, that they should do camera share, because there were so many cameras around me and inside my home. Why did each agency have to have a camera? Why don't you get together and just share it and whatever? A little joke. By the way, one of the things I like about Buddhism is one of the things that the Buddha said was the basis of human misery is ignorance. Ignorance is a lack of information, and that's what has been done, particularly in the United States, is the population has been left without information. They don't have a place to put this stuff. this new information. And another thing I like about Buddhism, and I'm not trying to promote Buddhism, it's not a religion. It's based on the human mind and what's good for it and what's not good for it. Is that all of their, you could call their prayers, all include praying about off-planet beings. Catholic religion doesn't do that. Protestants, whatever. I'm not that familiar with Hinduism and the rest of them, but Buddhism, all of their prayers include the different groups, the different realms, include off-planet beings. So if your religion is not going to sustain you at all during this process, and I don't think it will, just like it didn't sustain anybody during COVID, you might want to consider looking into Buddhism. And if you're going to go into Buddhism, go into Tantric Buddhism, because they are all about what human beings are, which are superhumans. And then they chiseled away parts of us and put walls up so that we couldn't see it, and we end up being what we are today. We're going into the superpowers. Okay, where do I go from here? Revelations. I'm just going to give different pieces of information. When I lived in Nevada as a child, I'm not sure that it was when I actually lived there on is it Ellis? No, the Air Force Base that's there. I was actually taken and I saw ETs, and I remember them in those glass containers. I was presented to an ET who saw me and said to whatever human was handling the transaction, he said, well, I don't really trust her. And I was a kid. I don't know where she's from. We don't know where she's from. That came up several times. Interesting. I'm just giving you as much of the information as I have. Okay? And if something's not to my advantage, I'm not going to give it to you, because guess what, guys? You guys have not been very good to me. I'm still totally abandoned today. And people are still like, maybe she's crazy. Why did she make that up? Oh my God, look at all that god-awful things she did when she was a victim of mind control. So I'm going to take care of myself. I'm just trying to give you information. And today I woke up with a sense of humor, because I have not had a sense of humor for days. It's really tiring to be shut up in an apartment that's less than 1,000 feet, where I can't go to the yard because we have all these people around me from the different agencies and the Venezuelans who are upset at me because of all the information. Whatever. We don't need to go into that. That's boring. So in the 90s, I had a boyfriend. It lasted not very long, because the cultural differences were unmanageable. But at that point, I was investigating consciousness, and I had understood some people have, within the channels of their mind streams, they have the energy just like dolphins, because this is an envelope of consciousness. This is not who you are. So dolphin consciousness comes into the planet, into the body of a dolphin, or into human beings that have dolphin consciousness. So I had found dolphin consciousness, angelic consciousness, whale consciousness, eagle consciousness, and cyborgs. Anyway, this boyfriend was a cyborg. As soon as I realized that, I went, well, that certainly explains a lot. The emotional component. First was, I'm a Cancer. We're totally emotional. I'm half Hispanic, emotional. Dolphin consciousness. And he was a cyborg. So that didn't last long. But here's what I want to tell you about that. He, as the information, especially the information I value the most, I'm not looking for it. I'm not there. What is this information about? One day I looked at him and I said, you were the driver of a spaceship that came to planet Earth. way back. And you brought some people. They were exploring, like apparently E.T., which makes sense. He was a cyborg. E.T., he comes to planet Earth and he's bringing other people, aliens, beings, whatever. And I have since identified one of the people that he was bringing to planet Earth. So anyway, so my relationship didn't last that long because there just was a cyborg with a dolphin. Just is not going to work. Maybe a cyborg with a whale, maybe a cyborg with an eagle, but not with a dolphin. So that really didn't last that long. Anyway, as the years have passed, I have because it was such an issue with everybody as to whether I was making this all up, and because of all those the 2 decades, 3, 4 decades in which I did not have access to that secret part of me. Talk about robotic. I still get information and I'm like tentative about it. I have to leave it there because I have to find a place of comfort with it. So ontological shock. But just about my life. Meanwhile, everybody's walking around like everything is okay, which by the way, it's not okay. Because while everybody has been asleep, parts of us that we have given control to have been doing all sorts of god-awful things with ETs. Bad ETs, because there's also good ETs. What's with the whole thing with the ETs? Like I say, it's just like walking around the streets of Miami. There's some people that are crazy. There's some people that are just regular people. There's some people that are nice. And there's some people that are different, but they're okay. And then there are people that are really bad and they're there and they're looking like they're okay, but they have an agenda that if you knew, you would be getting out of Dodge. Same thing with ETs. There's not 2 groups. There's probably not 10 groups. And everything has to do with intention, not with what you look like. Now, I read something in X. Some guy was saying that only the ETs can shape shift. That's not true. Lots of disinformation. We can all shapeshift. I mean, you've all seen the stories, but they're based on reality that people that are like witches, they can take their consciousness out of their vehicle of their physical body and put it into the body of a cat. And then in that shape-shifted form, they go and they visit their enemy and they're able to just sit there and watch what their enemy's doing. Now, I can do that, but I don't have to shapeshift. I can just take my consciousness and watch what other people are doing. I do it all the time. Which in a few minutes, we need to get into that tsunami in Japan, which has to do with a portal in the Pacific. So when I was a teenager, I was chosen by the US government. I was totally controlled by the government. I was owned by them. I was whatever. I was chosen to represent what would have been the United States, but I'm not sure that it didn't include a couple of other countries. There were like 5 representatives from planet Earth that were going to deal with a particular group of ETs that were making some demands. The demands that they were making were kind of interesting. They basically were saying, you need to agree to stop your technological development, the whole thing with the weapons, because you're going to destroy the planet, and it could even possibly affect other planets if you blow yourselves up. So there were meetings every 5 years, and they ended in 94, May of 94. May is the month in which the veils are the thinnest between dimensions, and I think it facilitates communication and travel off planet. I'm not 1,000% sure, but it was so 30 years back, every 5 years there would be a meeting for negotiations. And the bottom line, I don't know what the bottom line was the other meetings, but in the last meeting, in which I was already going to therapy and I was in contact with, and I said to my therapist, but she just said, just go with the flow. You've been handling this forever. Just go. You'll know what to do when it reaches there. I don't actually remember visually the meetings. I do know that the decision was made by the people on planet Earth that were controlled, obviously, by, I don't know, would you call it the deep state at that point? I don't know. That no, that Earth wasn't going to pay any attention to any requirements, that this was our planet and we would do whatever the hell we wanted. So interesting. So now I think the reason why I'm saying this is that I think a lot of attention needs to be paid to whoever's going to be contacting whatever the highest level of ETs would be, and the good ETs, who's going to represent this planet, this government, groups, who's going to represent them. And I have to assume that it will continue to be the situation at some level that the person who's going to do the communications would be somebody like me, somebody who has the kind of training, and the people making the decision would be a different group of people. So the person that would be communicating wouldn't necessarily be in agreement with what the humans would be communicating with the ETs. It gets complicated, but then it gets kind of interesting because we are at such a point of disclosure that there is very soon, and I believe it's already started the process of a different, not like the Nazis that worked with the bad ETs, but on a more open level, and on a level of not just benefiting a small group of people like the Nazis, but like on a country level. And I've discussed it openly, so I can say it here. Venezuela has some minerals or some type of minerals that are needed in the galactic spaceships. And so Venezuela has the right to set the terms for dealing with the, we say ETs as if they were one group. They're not. It's like what you're seeing just here in a graphic. You got 3 different dogs, you've got an ET, then you've got me twice, and then you have somebody in the, it's a mess. But Venezuela has the right and actually the obligation to represent their people with whatever ETs would be kind of the good ones that would want to do business. What would the exchange be? I have in Spanish is no tengo ni puta idea. That's like a bad word. It's like I don't know what the hell. I have no idea. I don't know what it would be. But what might be important, and I've said it many times openly in my chats in Spanish, where I've been allowed to say whatever, not anymore, right, in the last couple of months, but until then, it would be very important that those negotiations be ethical, to set a pattern, that it not just be groups like the Nazis that would be working with off-planet ETs. And I'm not saying that everything should be open, because when you have a business meeting, you don't open it to everybody. There's a negotiation process, whatever. But I think that this is the point at which we can establish certain parameters and ethical requirements for doing business with them. And I do not remember what I called it, but a common word. I forgot what it is, but I'm not finishing. I'm setting up a website. Oh my God. The Vatican has done a really good job on my head. A lot of times when I'm looking for a word, I can't find it. And let's not even talk about what my head does with numbers. The phase that we're in now is an integration with ETs. And the part of the phase that I think I'm going to enjoy the most, because I'm sick and tired of regular people who want a kind of proof that you're not going to be able to provide, who haven't been listening, and basically have an intention of not believing. I'm not interested in dealing with the layperson. Interesting that the business people, as usual, are more open if it means that they're going to be able to do more business. which is why I've determined that that is where I'm going to spend more of my time. The regular public has been asleep for too long and has a vested interest in staying asleep. And I am not dealing with that. Actually, I'm not dealing with anybody who has too much of a question mark about me. Well, look at your background. Yeah, look at my background. It's because you guys were asleep that I was able, as a child, to lose my life and be in the situation that I was in. So don't you be pointing your finger at me. Well, how do we know we can trust you? Well, I don't know that I can trust any of you guys. And I'm not going to say you're all very low IQ. I'm going to say you're very lazy, which is what my control told me. When I was a kid and they would discover these incredible things, I would say, God, we got to give this to the public. Got to get this to his kids. I mean, so what are you talking about? They don't want the information, the public. And at this point, we're talking about the United States. They don't want this information. They want to sit in front of their TV sets. They don't want this information because this information, if you give it, then you got to do something about it. What happened when I gave the information? Well, they certainly did something about it. From one day to the next, I went from being admired, okay, fine socially, to being labeled. Meanwhile, the people that their own professionals, the psychologists, and Dr. Colin Ross, nobody questioned my sanity. They understood from because they were specialists that what was coming out of my mouth, even though it was shocking to me, was the truth. And that we're going to go into those countries and those people who have not bought the whole thing that because a scientific study said this is true, that it's true. Cute story. I had a housekeeper that was from Peru. She had high cholesterol. So in the mornings when we had breakfast, she would sometimes chat with me what she saw on the news or whatever. And she said, no, they have this thing for high cholesterol. And so my doctor's going to get it for me. Great. And then a year later, she would say, you know what? They have a new study and there's this thing that's even better for the high cholesterol. So she would go on the second. A year or two later, she was with me for a long time, for several years. She said, you know, they have something new. And I'm going to try it. Okay. And then at some point, she said to me, you know something? I don't know what's going on, but all of these studies, this doesn't make any sense. So she was very instinctive. In those years, 20 and 30 years ago, everybody thought the United States had the best medical system. Oh my God. Meanwhile, I was saying, if I get sick, do not take me to a hospital. I told my daughter, do not take me to a hospital. If I get run over by a truck, you have to take me to a hospital because American medicine is really good if your body is broken. But if you have a system that's broken, you have a disease. I said, so if anything happens to me other than being run over, you take me home, call all my friends because all of them know how to do healings and they'll take it from there. And if I don't recuperate, it's because it's my time to leave. But in those years with that housekeeper, people were flying to the United States to get medical help. But that is only proof that people put their instincts away when it comes to belief system having to do with the science of religion. So most people don't believe the government, but they still follow their instructions. So one of the things that I have to recommend to you is that you absolutely don't inject your forehead with Botox. I want to talk about beauty treatments. I'm just joking. I'm not going to want to talk about beauty treatments. Your instincts need to be totally operational. Injecting Botox into your forehead destroys the flow of your meridian system in your forehead, which is where your third eye is, which is where your wisdom is. Do not put Botox in your forehead. And honor your instincts and find out if you're clairsentient, which means that when something happens, your body tightens up, or the hairs raise on your arm, or you get chills. That's being clairsentient, which means your psychic ability is in your solar plexus, which is not good because you run around with a stomach ache half the time because everything that you can't see but that you can feel is happening screws that up. Or you may be the kind of person that is claircognizant, which means that something happens and you instantly know the truth about that. You're being told this, but you instantly, it's like, it's this clarity, multidimensional clarity. That's called being claircognizant. Clairaudient means you can hear spirits. They talk to you and you can hear them. What's that? Schizophrenia. No, they're not schizophrenic. Well, they're schizophrenic, but that really means that they have too much contact with the spirit world and get they get crazy because the doctors tell them those spirits don't exist, but they do exist. And you have to drop any religion that does not spend all of their time teaching and talking to you about the influence of spirits on your life. Not the Catholic religion where the only spirit they talk about is the devil and how you're going to end up being like the devil if you keep being such a bad person. You need to know about the spirit world. And if you don't accept spirits, I don't know what the heck you're going to do with the whole ET thing, because they don't have physical manifestation until now, in my opinion, from what I know, which means they are a spirit. So if your religion has not taught you any of that, then I think you need to walk away really quick from your religion. And I think you need to go with people that understand that. Now, some people that do understand is Scientology. I'm not promoting Scientology at all. My first video, which a lot of you know, would cost $17.99. It was a videotape. And it had only one message, which was those words in your head, they're not necessarily yours. They're probably put there by spirits, which is true. But from what I understand from a Scientologist, you have to reach a certain level in Scientology, and then that piece of information already cost you a couple of $100,000 to reach that level. And then they tell you that, which I just told you in one sentence. By the way, one of the things that I was checking with this man that died, that killed himself, he shot himself in the face. Nobody shoots himself in the face, but I guess he did. But I was checking. I did not finish the check. I don't have a conclusion. But I thought, I don't know that they did not. There's something called an astral telegram, which in your head, you repeat a phrase and you send it to somebody. That's what the ETs do. That is what spirits do. The devil is an ET. And I, because of the initial news about this man that just killed himself, Wilcox, I thought maybe he was really attacked by spirits and they were feeding him through astral telegrams. They were feeding him, I want to die, I have to kill myself, I have to kill myself. And they can drive people crazy. That's how they do it. People, they want to die, they don't know if I tell them, just do the suicide mantra. Even though I want to die, I love and accept myself. And if you really feel like you want to kill yourself, even though I want to kill myself, I love and accept myself. I said, you're not going to have to do it very long because those emotions are not internally generated. They're sent. We call them until now influence. And I knew about this and I talked about it 30 years ago. And then I came up with a technique called astral telegrams. If you have somebody close to you that's massively depressed, you tell God, this is for them. And you do the mantra. Even though I'm depressed, I love and accept myself. You do it for them. Or you send them an astral telegram and you say, it's going to be okay. 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 And you just keep sending them that message. And a vector comes out of you and reaches them. I'm smiling because anytime I talk about a vector, I remember Elon Musk because he said that when you have a company, everybody has to be, he didn't say the word vector, I don't think. He just said everybody has to be pointed in the same direction with the same intentions. But when you have an intention and you're focused on something, literally your center axis forms a vector towards that. So if you have somebody that's massively depressed, just tell God, this is for them. Astral telegram. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And I think you're going to have to be doing it a lot. I've already been talking for 40 minutes, so we're going to shut this down here. I have other disclosures. Um, for me, it was disclosure when I woke up to all these memories and I found out that I was a psychic spy. There's going to be an awful lot going on, and the most important thing is to stay centered and grounded, which means you need to become really friendly with trees and parks and mountains, because that's the earth energy. And according to the Lord's Prayer in the original language, which was Aramaic, you don't have to ask God to protect you from evil. Is that going to be the excuse the government's going to use to take away all our powers? You have to be protected from ETs. The Lord's Prayer in Aramaic does not say, deliver us or protect us from evil. It says, help us to be in the present, which means not disassociated, which means you have enough of the earth element. So as things get really bad, because they will, because there's just too many people that aren't ready, you want to become very friendly with trees and parks and have a towel in your car. And when you're going to have lunch, grab your lunch, go to the local park or trees that are near you, sit on the ground, lean up against a tree. Don't hug it because people think you're nuts, and that's okay. But make sure you have enough of the earth element. And then tomorrow I'm going to come back on and I'm going to talk to you about portals. So I'm just going to say one little story before I close this down. In the 90s, I took care of 50 kids that were autistic. And one of the children that I took care of, and I had an office and I would see people in person. I don't see people in person today, or haven't for a long time. So the couple came with their child, and the child was sitting here. The couple was over here, and I was in front of the child, and I was going to start with my psychic ability to see what we could do to help out. And ET showed up. At that point, I was struggling with who I was. And he said, "This one is ours." Okay. Don't do it. This one is ours. So I breathed and I backed off and I said to the parents, listen, something just happened here. I'm going to tell you what happened. I cannot take care of your child. This ET showed up and they were Hispanic, so they didn't have too much of a problem with that. Any Hispanic, if you ask them 3 different times, they're going to tell you that they saw ETs, they saw spaceships, or their first cousin did. And of course, the cousin's not lying. So they didn't question that. They just said, but we need for you to help us with our child. And I said, listen, I don't even know how to start with this situation. I cannot do it. I'm sorry. And so they left. So that plus one other thing, and then the next time you hear from me, it'll be portals. I wanted to understand how black magic worked. I couldn't deal with that. I don't like it. But I wanted to understand, because one of the things that I'm very good at with psychic things is that I understand the mechanical process. Because as a child, I worked with military and with scientists, and I would talk to them in my child whatever, and they didn't know anything, and they'd get angry at me. So I learned that if I sketched what I saw, then they could understand it better, at which time my life was going to be a lot better. All these angry men, 6 feet tall, and I'm this little kid. But in that process, I learned to sketch the dynamics, the movement of energy, which very few people can see or do. So I said to my Buddha, um, I said, I want to understand, how does this work? How can I have clients who have ancestral curses? That's in the Bible. How does this happen? 200-300 years? I don't get it. And what they showed me was that the black magician does a ritual. It opens up a mind string to off planet, to ETs, not the nice ones. And the ritual is to destroy this person and his ancestors for 6 generations. But it's the ET that makes it happen, not the black magician. What the black magician did was networked with off-planet forces. So the black magician opens a portal with a ritual. So I have to tell you something else, in case I never get on here again. AI opens portals. That is why so many people instinctively and now knowingly know that AI is going to destroy us. Every document that you open up, every platform that has AI is opening a portal to the same part of the universe that gave us the devil. Except they don't necessarily look like the devil, nor does the devil necessarily look like we're shown that he looks. So I have a solution. The problem is that it is so simple, the solution, that I doubt it. But I'm going to give you the solution, which is a sigil, which is alien technology, which I put together. How can you do that, Francis? Well, maybe I have integrated the alien part of me. Maybe the government handlers made me integrate that part of me when I was a child, and nobody made you do it. But let's get with the sigil and then let's finish here. This sigil closes portals, and it has a cannabis leaf around it. Because I love cannabis so much, I wanted to make sure that I would irritate you by putting that there. No, cannabis is a sacred plant that reduces fire. People don't misbehave unless they have excess fire. Okay? So we don't want to just close the portal. We want to close whatever intention of the ETs or the physical beings that open that portal. It is scary when, what is his name? Not going to remember. Thank you, Vatican. It's coming out that they are knowingly opening portals with their AI programs, which is the thing that has had me hysterical since the beginning. This sigil, which is a technology that's basically you would call on planet Earth magic. It's not magic off planet, which is the point. It closes portals. So copy it. It's free. And put it on all your documents, put it on your monitor, put it on your computer, put it on your cell phone, put it any place that something AI may come in. I'm going to be having a long discussions with my masters about the level to which the sigil works. We have dozens of testimonials, but I want to know the extent to what it works, because I need for it to work on the robots that Elon is putting out. On why Elon? Because he's an ethical person. Because if I can get that to happen, it would be something that, in my opinion, he's going to want. Remember, this is just a vessel. They talk about those vessels a lot in Judaism. What's poured into it? And that's the problem with AI. It gets poured into things. It gets poured into your life. It gets poured into your documents. By the way, I have AI. I think it's Word. on my word someplace because I did not sign up for that. But I find that when I check, 20% of when they did all the corrections, the document or the word or the paragraph is not saying what I intended and what I wrote. It changes the meaning. An entire planet of people that do not triple check their documents after AI went through them, we are obviously going to be in deep trouble. Okay. Thank you for joining me. So we're going to go into portals. Every place you have a disease is a portal. If not, those parasites wouldn't have been able to come in. Thank you for joining me.